Hello, Hello everyone. Welcome to my talk about homeopathy and the principles of homeopathy. Homeopathy's been around since the early 1800s, and it was developed by a German doctor called Samuel Hahnemann. He was a very intelligent young man, and in 1775, he went to university to study medicine, even though he was still quite young. Once he qualified, he started a medical practice but actually gave up within 10 years because he was disillusioned with both the effectiveness of the remedies and the substances he had to use, but also the harmful effects he was seeing in the form of side effects. And so he felt he really couldn't continue in practice. However, at this stage, he was married and had children, so he had to earn his living somehow. And he did that by translating medical textbooks. As he started to translate the different textbooks, he got very involved with the subject and learned a lot about different forms of medicine. But he felt that he needed to add his own footnotes and observations to the discussions that were going on in the textbooks. So that by the time he had been doing it for a while, he'd actually been able to study all of the ideas about medicine and evaluate them for both their effectiveness and their usefulness. And it was in 1790 he was asked to translate Cullen's Materia Medica of herbal medicines. And he read the statement about cinchona bark. And from his medical training, he knew that this was actually a very specific treatment for intermittent fever, which was the name given then to malaria. But he didn't believe the statement that was in Cullen's, which actually said that it was effective because it was a tonic on the stomach. So because he was a scientific man, he decided to experiment on himself and see what actually happens when you take cinchona bark. And I'd like to read you just a short description of what he actually did. So I took by way of experiment twice a day 4 drams of good china. My feet, finger ends, etc. at first became cold, and I grew languid and drowsy. Then my heart began to palpate, and my pulse grew hard and small, and I had intolerable anxiety, trembling, prostration through all my limbs, and then pulsation in my head, redness of my cheeks, thirst, and in short, all these symptoms, which are ordinarily characteristic of intermittent fever, made their appearance one after another, but without the peculiar chill and shivering rigor that's the fever. And briefly, even though those symptoms came on regularly, such as stupidity of mind and rigidity of my limbs, but it was really the numb, disagreeable sensation, which seemed to be in the periosteum, the lining over every bone in the body. And they all made their appearance. And they lasted 2 to 3 hours each time, and then stopped, but recurred if I repeated this dose, otherwise they didn't come back. When I discontinued it, I was in good health. So what he realized he was seeing was the validity of a very old therapeutic principle, which actually is called like cures like. And this was then the thing he studied. Back in the time of Hippocrates, they knew there were 2 systems of medicine. You could have the law of similars and the law of opposites. And what Samuel Hahnemann saw was the law of similars. The difficulty people had when they used the law of similars is that many of the substances they wanted to use were poisons. And it was very difficult to get the therapeutic dose right. Even now, a medical drug has to follow what is called an LD50 test. which means you have to find the lethal level of that. And you find that by finding how much you need to give to kill off 50% of the lab animals. And if something doesn't kill 50% of the lab animals, it can't be classified as a drug. So Samuel Hahnemann was realizing he was going to be using the law of similars. Now, we know about the law of similars already, but to give you a couple of examples, if you know that the Eskimos, if they have frostbite, they will actually put snow onto the frostbitten area, and it actually helps to change it and to heal it. If the other end of things, if you are working in a pizza parlor and you burn your hand, the guys are told to put their hand in the heat of the oven, and it takes away the pain of the burn. And people always feel that's a bit strange when they're used to thinking of treating burns with cold water and that sort of thing. But actually try it. If you've got a small burn, try using warm or hot water or hot air to treat it and see what it does. I've done it on several occasions, and it's very, very effective. In that, what happens is after a short amount of time, 2 or 3 minutes, the area that's burnt will sort of buzz with energy, and then the pain will go away. Very interesting. Hahnemann therefore decided that he wanted to establish a system of medicine that was based solely on experimenting and experimental effectiveness, particularly. He encouraged his family and his friends to allow him to experiment on them. And what he decided to do was to prove, or to test, or what he called prove, all the substances that were then known to have some positive effect. And over his life, he studied about 200 different substances and developed a materia medica of homeopathic provings, which is still the basis of what we're working with today. And through this process, he established the second principle of homeopathy, which is that all substances that are used homeopathically and made into homeopathic medicines are actually proved on healthy people. So they're tested. And what we would do with the proving is that you would choose to participate. So everybody is a willing participant. They have their history, their case history taken by someone who's managing the proving. And then they're given a substance. They don't know what it is. The person who took their case history doesn't know what it is. So it's a double-blind process. And then they keep taking that until they start to make some sort of symptoms in their body that are different. And at that point, they stop taking the substance. The person who took their case carries on looking after them, talking to them over a couple of months, 3 months, and keeping a track of all the different things that happened to that person over that time. And then that information is then brought into a central office, and all the different people who've been involved in the proving, their notes are brought together, and the master prover will then carry on and collate all the symptoms that have come out from that different substance. However, that's the basic level. A remedy symptom doesn't get confirmed until it's actually been confirmed in practice. So it's been prescribed to somebody and their symptoms got better because they had that remedy. So Hahnemann developed 200 remedies and proved them within his life and started using them. But he also studied the reports of poisonings so that he could use some of that information and start to use some of the substances medically as well. So he then went back into medicine and started to see people and prescribe all the things that he knew worked, and because he'd proved them. But he started to prescribe them according to the law of similars, not the law of opposites. And he started to have success, and he started people coming back and they were feeling better and again the symptoms were improving. But he still found he was seeing a lot of unpleasant side effects. And that was one of the things that told him to stop medicine in the first place. So he needed to do something to sort that out. So he decided to do the thing that's made homeopathy one of the most controversial medicines around. He started to progressively dilute the substances he was using. And he would either dilute them 1 in 10 or 1 in 100. And then with each dilution, he succussed them, which meant that he hit the tube onto a certain number of times. And he used a leather Bible to do this because he said it had the right level of resilience, that it wouldn't break the tube, but it would actually put some energy into the tube and the water. And the Helios Pharmacy in Tunbridge Wells still uses this method today when they make up their remedies. So Hahnemann started now progressively diluting and succussing his remedies. And to his great satisfaction, he found that the side effects went away, which was really what he wanted. But to his amazement, he also found that the remedies worked quicker and more effectively. And this is the reason why homeopathy has come to the attention of so many skeptics, because they can't understand how such a highly diluted substance can have any effect in the body. In mainstream medicine, if you want something to work more quickly, or you've got a more serious condition, you give more of the drug. But in homeopathy, you give a higher dilution, which in effect is actually giving effectively less of it. But we know that you're giving a more powerful dose. So this is why skeptics say that the positive set effects that are seen in homeopathic treatments are just a placebo effect. However, I've treated many babies and I've seen the reports of the effects of homeopathic remedies on animals. And you can't have a placebo effect on an animal or a baby. They don't know they're having their case taken. They don't know what's happening. They're just given a small pill. One of the first examples I ever saw was actually, I think, a Horizon television program where a farmer was treating his cows who had mastitis. And he separated the cows into 2 different fields. And all that he did was he added homeopathic remedy into the water trough of one half of the herd. And he saw a real significance in the difference in the levels of mastitis in the herds that received the homeopathic remedy in their water than the side that didn't. And they didn't know, they were just drinking their water. So there cannot be a placebo effect in that situation. The reason I love homeopathy is because I get to work with people and everybody is different, which is the other problem with things like doing research studies, is that all of the remedies that we choose are totally individualized. I spend up to an hour and a half with people, and during that time they often make a connection with the reasons why they might be developing different symptoms. And then when they take the remedy, they start to see changes in their health and in their life, but also how they view the world. And that's also individual. I can prescribe according to certain symptoms, but the person uses the remedy in lots of other ways as well. And I wait and see the response, and we both wait and see the response. There are thousands of remedies to choose from, and it may not be possible to get exactly the right remedy first time. But what we do is then look at things that have changed over the time of the prescription. And then if not enough has moved on and changed, make a small adjustment so that the next remedy is even more specific to the person's needs. So you can see why it can be quite difficult to design a research study when you're looking at that individualized homeopathic prescription. With most studies, you would say, I'm going to give this half of the study a drug, and then I'm going to give the other half of the study a sugar pill. And we'll see how that affects and treats their condition, their arthritis. However, with homeopathy, you need to know about the person and how they're reacting to their arthritis, and not just the symptoms of the arthritis. And then there might be hundreds of remedies to choose from, not just one. Also, people find that the consultation itself is part of the process and part of the prescription, because of the energy connection that you make together in working through the person's case and looking at their life and then deciding on the best fit remedies. People often say they feel better even before they've received a remedy, just because of that energy connection that we've made. So that's just the beginning. I hope you found that helpful. I'm going to do another webinar talking about a few more of the principles of homeopathy, and I hope you'll enjoy listening to that as well. So thanks very much. Have a great day.